Former U.S. President Donald Trump has once again made global headlines after officially announcing that he will not attend the upcoming G20 Summit, which is scheduled to be held in South Africa this coming November. His reason? A controversial and highly sensitive one, what he has repeatedly described as the so-called persecution of white farmers and land seizures without compensation in the country. Trump's refusal to attend the international gathering for the second time in a row has stirred intense debate, revived political tensions, and opened up complex conversations about human rights, race relations, global diplomacy, and the legacy of colonial land ownership in South Africa. This has brought renewed focus on Trump's long-standing position regarding South Africa's land reform process and the treatment of white minorities, especially farmers, in the country. Land ownership in South Africa is rooted in a painful history of dispossession, stretching back to the colonial period and becoming fully institutionalized during apartheid. Large tracts of land were taken from black South Africans and redistributed to white settlers, creating a deep and lasting imbalance. By the time apartheid ended in 1994, the majority of productive farmland remained in white hands, despite their minority status in the population. This disparity fueled demands for land reform, and the post-apartheid government began efforts to address these injustices through policies of restitution, redistribution, and tenure reform. However, decades later, frustration persists. Many South Africans believe that progress has been too slow, with only a fraction of land returned to black ownership. In response to growing discontent, the South African government began exploring more radical measures, including the controversial policy of expropriation without compensation. The idea was to amend the constitution to allow the state to take land in specific cases where it serves the public interest, without the obligation to pay for it. This proposal sparked alarm among white farmers, property rights advocates, and critics abroad who feared it would undermine South Africa's economy, create instability, and open the door to racially charged abuses. Trump has consistently aligned himself with these concerns. As early as 2018, during his presidency, he tweeted that he had asked his Secretary of State to study the alleged large-scale killing of white farmers and land seizures, echoing talking points that were widely criticized as misleading and inflammatory. Now, with the G20 summit on the horizon, Trump has reiterated his stance. According to a statement released by his spokesperson, Trump will boycott the summit to protest what he calls ongoing human rights violations against white farmers and land seizures without compensation. He emphasized that he refuses to legitimize a government that ignores these atrocities. These remarks have once again drawn condemnation from South African officials. Minister of International Relations Naledi Pandor called Trump's statements inaccurate and accused him of undermining the principles of cooperation and dialogue that define the G20. She affirmed that South Africa remains committed to inclusive growth, social justice, and constitutional order. The government also rejected the idea that white South Africans are being systematically targeted, citing crime statistics and independent studies that show farm attacks affect both black and white victims and are often motivated by robbery rather than race. While crime remains a major issue in South Africa, with high rates of violence across rural and urban areas, the narrative of targeted persecution has been challenged by numerous experts. Nevertheless, the idea persists in some international circles, particularly among Trump's base, where it reinforces a broader narrative of defending Western values, property rights, and Christian identity in foreign policy debates. Political analysts believe Trump's move is largely symbolic, designed to maintain his relevance on the world stage and solidify support among his loyal followers ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. According to Dr. Raymond Ellis, a Washington-based analyst, Trump's decision to snub the summit isn't really about South Africa, it's about using a global stage to repeat familiar themes that resonate with certain American voters. By framing himself as a defender of persecuted minorities abroad, Trump positions himself as a moral crusader in a world he sees as increasingly hostile to Western civilization. This approach allows him to stay in the headlines, generate political capital, and set the terms of debate, even from outside official office. It's also notable that this marks the second consecutive G20 summit hosted in South Africa that Trump has chosen to skip. In 2022, when he was still considered a serious contender for the Republican nomination, he cited similar reasons. His refusal to attend has become part of a larger pattern in his foreign policy legacy, one that favors directness and often bypasses diplomatic norms. Unlike his predecessors, Trump has consistently questioned multilateral institutions, challenged global consensus, and embraced a more nationalist, transactional approach to international engagement. His actions send a signal, not just to South Africa, but to the world, that his vision of U.S. leadership is fundamentally different from the post-World War II model built on alliances, compromise, and collective action. Meanwhile, preparations for the G20 summit continue in South Africa. The event is expected to draw leaders from the world's most powerful economies, including those of the European Union, China, India, Brazil, and the United States. Topics will include economic recovery in the post-pandemic era, sustainable infrastructure, digital trade, and climate finance. Despite Trump's absence, the summit is projected to be a significant moment for South Africa to showcase its leadership in the global south and reaffirm its commitment to multilateralism. The country sees the G20 as a platform to push for reforms in the global financial system and to advocate for greater equity between developed and developing nations. Still, Trump's statements have cast a shadow over the proceedings. They raise difficult questions about how the world views land reform, human rights, and the balance between historical justice and current political realities. Some worry that Trump's rhetoric could embolden hardliners both inside and outside South Africa, deepen polarization, and derail careful efforts to resolve land disputes peacefully. Others argue that such controversies are inevitable in a globalized world where domestic politics increasingly bleed into foreign affairs. Trump remains a deeply polarizing figure, and his latest comments on South Africa are yet another example of how his words continue to shape global discourse. What do you guys think about Trump's decision to boycott the G20 summit in South Africa? Do you believe his claims about the persecution of white farmers have any merit, or is this just another political move ahead of the midterms? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the Political Spectrum, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We'll be following this story closely, so stay tuned for more in-depth analysis.